The morning my husband left for his so-called conference in Denver, he kissed me on the forehead the way you'd kiss someone you'd already decided to leave behind. Not romantically. Not even affectionately, really. It was the kind of kiss that's more about checking a box than feeling anything. I stood at the kitchen window watching his Tahoe back out of the driveway, and I remember thinking that the neighborhood looked too quiet for a Tuesday. The oak trees hadn't started turning yet. The Henderson sprinklers were running even though it had rained the night before. I didn't know that kiss would be the last normal moment of my life for a very long time. My name is not important. What's important is that I was 29 years old, 8 months into a marriage I had believed in completely, and living in a house that wasn't mine with a mother-in-law I had grown to love more than I'd ever expected to. My mother-in-law had been diagnosed with early-onset dementia 2 years before I came into the picture. She was 63, sharp-tongued and funny in the way that only women who've survived a lot can be funny. When my husband first introduced us, she'd look me up and down and said, "You have kind eyes, that matters more than people think." I'd liked her immediately. By the time we married, her condition had progressed enough that she needed help with certain things. Medications at specific times. Reminders about appointments. Someone to make sure she ate lunch, because she'd get absorbed in her jigsaw puzzles and forget. My husband had suggested, once, that we look into a memory care facility. I'd said no. She was his mother. She was family. We had the space. We had the means. I wasn't willing to ship her off somewhere clinical and fluorescent, just because it was convenient. I never told him how much that suggestion had bothered me. I should have paid more attention to the things I never told him. The morning he left, I made my mother-in-law scrambled eggs with the sharp cheddar she liked and brought them to her room. She was sitting up in bed working on a puzzle of the Grand Canyon. She looked up at me and smiled and said, "Ethan left already." His name wasn't Ethan. But I'm not using his real name here. I'll call him by nothing at all, because he doesn't deserve even a made-up one. "Yes," I said, "he'll be back Friday." She nodded slowly, turning a puzzle piece over in her fingers. "He seemed in a hurry," she said. "Conference thing," I said. She didn't say anything else. I set her tray down and went to do laundry. It was around 11 when I noticed the smell. I was folding towels in the hallway outside the laundry room when it hit me. Faint at first, like something left on the stove. I walked to the kitchen and checked every burner. All off. I sniffed near the oven. Nothing obvious. I stood in the middle of the kitchen for a second, trying to figure out if I was imagining it, and then it hit me again, slightly stronger. That rotten egg smell that isn't really eggs at all. Gas. That's what they add to natural gas so you can detect it. Mercaptan. I learned that later. At the time, I just knew something was wrong. I went to check my mother-in-law first. Her room was at the back of the house, which I later understood was deliberate. I found her still at her puzzle, unbothered, the smell not yet reaching that part of the house. I told her to stay put, that I was checking something, and I went back toward the kitchen. The smell was definitely coming from the area near the stove. I leaned down and that's when I saw it, the flexible connector behind the range, the one that connects the gas line to the back of the stove. It was loose, more than loose. It looked like it had been partially disconnected. Not the way something comes loose from vibration or age, the way something gets worked free deliberately, over time, or all at once. My hand started shaking. I turned off the main gas valve, the one under the sink that I'd never had reason to touch before. I cracked the window above the sink. I cracked the back door. I stood there breathing through my mouth and trying to think clearly. I picked up my phone to call him. No signal. 1 bar, then 0. Our house sat in a shallow valley. We'd always had spotty coverage inside, which is why we had a Wi-Fi calling setup through the router. I tried to pull up the Wi-Fi and got nothing. The router's lights, which normally blink steady blue from its spot on the kitchen counter, were all dark. He had turned off the router before he left. I stood there for a moment just processing that. He had turned off the router. The gas connector had been loosened. He had locked the front gate, a wrought iron gate at the end of our driveway that I had always thought was a nice security feature. From the outside when he left, I remembered hearing the mechanical click of it from the window. My car was in the garage. His car was gone. My mother-in-law couldn't drive. I walked to the front door and looked through the glass panel beside it at the gate. Locked. I went to the side door that led to the backyard. It opened fine, But our yard backed up to a 6-foot cedar privacy fence, and the gate on the far side of it, the one that opened onto the easement path behind the houses, had a padlock on it that I had never owned a key to. I had never needed to. Until now. I sat down on the back step and tried to breathe. I didn't understand yet what I was looking at. I kept trying to find alternative explanations. Maybe the router had just lost power. Maybe the connector had worked itself loose somehow. Maybe the gate had been locked for security for my protection while he was away, and I was building a horror movie out of a series of coincidences. Then I went back inside and I found the papers. They were in the kitchen drawer where we kept takeout menus and old coupons and the manual for the dishwasher. The junk drawer, in other words, the place you never look unless you're desperate. I don't even know what I was looking for when I opened it, a candle maybe, or matches. Something to do with my hands while I thought. But there was an envelope tucked under everything. Letter-sized, unsealed. Inside were 2 things. A life insurance policy, a joint policy I thought I'd signed 2 years ago as a formality, and a new one. A replacement policy. With a payout of $1.4 million, beneficiary listed as his brother, who I had met exactly once at our wedding and who had sat in the back and left during cocktail hour. The issue date on the new policy was 3 weeks ago. I put the papers down on the counter very carefully, the way you set something down when your hands are not entirely steady. I looked at them for a long time, then I looked at my phone. 0 bars, no Wi-Fi, no way to call 911 or anyone else. I was thinking so hard that I almost didn't hear her. Sweetheart. My mother-in-law was standing in the kitchen doorway. Not shuffling. Not bracing herself against the frame the way she usually did when she'd gotten up without her walker. Standing. Upright. Both hands at her sides. Her eyes, which I was used to seeing slightly foggy and distant, were clear and focused and looking directly at me. Don't panic, she said. I need you to listen to me. I think I said her name. I don't actually remember. I've been waiting for the right time, she said, and I think this is it. She walked to the kitchen table, walked, not shuffled, not braced, and sat down across from me. She folded her hands on the table. She looked like a woman chairing a meeting. My memory is not as gone as your husband believes, she said. I have good days and bad days, and on my good days, I understand quite a lot of what's happening around me, including what he's been planning. I stared at her. He's been moving money, she said, slowly, into an account I wasn't supposed to know about. I saw a statement in his office last spring, on a good day. I've been watching since then. She paused. I also heard his phone call. About 3 weeks ago. He didn't know I was in the hallway. 3 weeks ago, the same time the insurance policy was issued. Who was he talking to? I asked. My voice came out very flat, which is what happens to me when I'm frightened. I get quiet instead of loud. A woman, she said. He said, by Friday, it'll be done. He said the house will be mine and the payout will cover everything. He said she'll never see it coming. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, the Henderson sprinklers were still running. I told her about the gas connector, about the router, about the gate. She didn't flinch. I was afraid it would be something like that, she said. I didn't know what or when. I should have said something sooner. I kept waiting for a day when I could be sure I was thinking clearly, when I was sure I wasn't filling in gaps wrong. Her voice dropped slightly. That's the cruelest part of this disease. You can't always trust yourself. I reached across the table and took her hands. Okay, I said. Okay. We need to get out or we need to get help. No phone signal. No Wi-Fi. Front gate locked, back fence padlocked. What did you see in his office exactly? Was there anything we can use? She looked at me steadily. There's a tablet, she said. He gave it to me for the puzzles apps and the memory games. I don't think he remembered it connects to cellular data, not Wi-Fi. He may not have thought to disable it. I was already standing up. The tablet was on her nightstand. I grabbed it and held my breath while it loaded. A small icon in the corner showed 1 bar of LTE signal. It wasn't much, it was enough. I opened the browser and navigated to my Gmail because I couldn't get the 911 dispatcher app to load and I didn't know if texting 911 would work on a tablet. I typed an email to my best friend, who I had talked to the night before, who knew what was happening in my life, who would understand the urgency immediately. And I typed it fast and ugly with no punctuation, and I told her exactly where I was, what I'd found, and that I was locked in and needed her to call the police to our address right now. I hit send. The progress bar spun. Then it said, sent. Then I opened the tablet's Maps app, and I found the non-emergency line for our county sheriff's office, and I got through on the second try, and I told the woman who answered that I believed my husband had tampered with our gas line and locked us in the house, and that I had documented evidence of a life insurance policy that appeared to be a motive for what looked like an attempt on my life and my mother-in-law's life, and that we needed an officer to come to our property as soon as possible. She asked me to stay on the line. I stayed on the line. My mother-in-law sat beside me on her bed with her hand on my arm the entire time, steady and warm, and I focused on that. 40 minutes later, I heard the crunch of tires unravel through the bedroom window. It wasn't the police. It was his Tahoe. He had told me Denver. He had said 4 days. He'd been less than an hour away. I kept the dispatcher on the line, and I whispered to her that he was here, that he had come back early, and she said units were already en route and were approximately 6 minutes out, and to stay inside and stay calm and not confront him. I heard his key in the front door. I heard him call my name, that same flat box-checking tone, like the kiss that morning. My mother-in-law squeezed my arm. I did not move. I did not answer. I heard him walk through the living room. I heard him pause, probably at the kitchen, probably noticing the back door I had left cracked for ventilation, noticing the gas valve turned off, noticing the papers I had left on the counter without thinking. I heard his footsteps change. Faster now, less casual. "Hey," he called. "Hey, where are you?" My mother-in-law looked at me. Her expression was the clearest I had ever seen it. I heard him on the stairs. And then, outside, I heard the first siren. He heard it too. The footsteps on the stairs stopped. 2 more sirens joined the first one. Then the crunch of tires, more than one vehicle, coming fast up the gravel drive. I heard him run back down the stairs. I heard the front door open. I heard a voice I didn't recognize, male, loud, authoritative, say, "Sir, I need you to stop right there. Keep your hands where I can see them." Then more voices, overlapping, then silence. Then a knock at the bedroom door, different in character from everything before it, and a woman's voice saying she was Officer Delgado and asking if anyone was in the house, and was anyone hurt. I opened the door. I don't really remember the next hour in order. I remember sitting on the front porch steps with a shock blanket around my shoulders, even though it wasn't cold. I remember a detective photographing the gas line connector and the insurance papers and the router. I remember another officer showing me, on his own phone, a text from my best friend saying she'd gotten my email and had already called 911 before I'd even gotten through on the tablet myself. I remember my mother-in-law sitting in a camp chair that one of the officers had brought from our garage, drinking a cup of coffee that someone had made her, doing a crossword on her tablet with complete composure, as though she hadn't just helped save both our lives. I walked over to her at some point and sat down in the grass beside her chair. "How long?" I asked. "How long have you been clearer than you let on?" She thought about it. "It comes and goes," she said honestly. "Some days I genuinely don't know what year it is. Other days I'm quite myself." She paused. "I learned early on that people underestimate you when they think you're diminished." I stopped correcting the assumption. "He thought you were too far gone to notice anything," I said. "He thought I was furniture," she said pleasantly, and filled in another crossword answer. "He was arrested in our driveway that afternoon, charged with attempted murder. 2 counts, 1 for me, 1 for his mother. The woman he'd been talking to, who turned out to be a coworker with whom he'd been having an affair for over a year, was brought in for questioning and later charged as an accessory. His brother, the named beneficiary, claimed to know nothing, and I believe that was probably true. He had just been a convenient name. The house turned out to have been purchased entirely with a trust fund that had been his mother's to begin with. Money from her parents that she had given him years ago because he was her son and she trusted him. Her attorney, who had been quietly concerned for some time, had been maintaining records. Those records mattered a great deal in the months that followed. I filed for divorce while he was in county lockup awaiting arraignment. My attorney, who was extraordinarily good at her job, made sure that my mother-in-law's original assets were properly protected and that her care was fully provided for going forward. We found her a wonderful neurologist who adjusted her medication regimen and told us that her clear periods might become more frequent with the right treatment. He was right, they have. She still lives with me. I bought a house, smaller than the one we'd shared with him, but mine, bought with settlement money my attorney fought hard to secure. There's a sunroom where the light is good for puzzles. She has a garden now. She grows tomatoes and talks to them, which she claims is clinically proven to help plants grow, and I have not looked into whether that's actually true because I don't want to take it away from her. I asked her once, about 6 months after everything, why she hadn't found a way to warn me sooner. She was quiet for a while. "I wasn't sure you'd believe me," she finally said. He was very good at making people doubt things, and I wasn't sure I'd be able to explain it in a way that made sense, given how I am some days. She looked at her tomato plants, and I think, honestly, I was afraid. He was my son. Even after everything, some part of me kept hoping I was misunderstanding. I understood that. I had spent a year and a half not seeing what was right in front of me, and I hadn't had a medical reason for it. Love makes people miss things. It's one of the ways it can hurt you. What I know now is this. The person who saved my life that day was a 63-year-old woman with a degenerative neurological condition who had been watching and waiting and holding on to the truth on her good days so that she could use it when it mattered. She didn't run. She didn't panic. She sat down at my kitchen table with her hands folded and she told me what she knew, calmly and clearly, like she'd been rehearsing it for the right moment. Because she had been. That's the version of her that people missed when they saw the puzzle apps and the foggy eyes and the occasional wrong year. They saw the diminishment and stopped looking for the person inside it. She was always there, watching, waiting, on the good days fully herself, and on the day it counted most, completely extraordinary. His trial is scheduled for March. I'll be there. So will she. I keep coming back to the junk drawer. Of all the things that happened that day, the gas smell, the locked gate, the tablet with 1 bar of signal, what stays with me most is the image of that unsealed envelope, sitting under the takeout menus. He hadn't even hidden it well. He put it in the most ordinary place in the house and counted on me never looking. He counted on my trust being so complete that I would never go digging. And until that morning, he would have been right. That's the part I had to sit with for a long time. Not what he did, that became clear enough in the months that followed, 2 court documents and phone records and a coworker who eventually told investigators everything. What I had to sit with was what I had let myself not see. I was not stupid. I was not weak. I was someone who had chosen to believe the best about a person, and I had confused that choice with love. They're not the same thing. Choosing not to look is not the same as trusting. I understand the difference now. My mother-in-law taught me that, in a way, she probably didn't intend to. She had watched. On her good days, when the fog lifted and she was fully herself again, she had paid attention. She had read the statement she wasn't supposed to see. She had stood in the hallway and listened. She had held on to what she knew, carefully, like something fragile she was keeping safe until the right moment. That takes a kind of courage that most people don't recognize as courage, because it's quiet. It doesn't look like bravery from the outside. It looks like an old woman doing a crossword puzzle. But she had made a choice, over and over, on every good day she had, to stay sharp, to stay present, to keep watching. She couldn't control her disease. She could control her disease. She could control what she did with the clarity she still had. That's not a small thing. That's everything. I think about the life she lived before I knew her. Raising a son on her own after her husband left, building something from nothing, then trusting that something to the wrong person because he was her child and she loved him. She had made her own mistakes of not looking. And then, at 63, with a degenerating brain and a son who had written her off as furniture, she found a way to pay attention anyway. To do the right thing anyway. To act when it mattered. Even though it cost her something enormous. That's what I want to carry forward. Not the fear, not the anger at myself for missing what I missed. those are useful only up to a point. And I've used them up. What I want to carry is the understanding that being a good person is not passive. It's not just about having good intentions or being kind when it's easy. It's about staying awake. Noticing. Asking the uncomfortable question when something doesn't sit right, even when you'd rather not know the answer. She didn't wait to be certain before she acted. She waited until she was clear-headed enough to be useful, and then she acted with everything she had. I want to live like that. I want to be the kind of person who pays attention on the good days, and who has enough of them because I've been taking care of myself, because I haven't been looking away from things that matter. Her trial testimony is scheduled for March. She's been practicing what she wants to say. She told me last week over coffee that she's not nervous. I believe her completely.